Hello and welcome everyone. I'm Heidi McDowell. I'm a training advisor here at CBT Nuggets, and I'm here today to introduce Brian Alderman. He's one of our amazing trainers here at CBT Nuggets. Today's webinar is going to be on SharePoint and how to get active in your SharePoint community. At the end of this, we will be having a recording available on our blog, which is blog.cbtnuggets.com. During this webinar, if you have any questions, you can enter them on the chat pod. It's located to your left. And I think we will go ahead and get this started. So Brian, take it away.
All right. Thank you very much, Heidi. And thanks everyone for taking time out of your very busy schedules to join us here at CBT Nuggets. As she's mentioned, we're going to talk about how you can get involved in the SharePoint community, because SharePoint being the product it is, there are a lot of options out there for you to work with. Again, my name is Brian Alderman. I'm based out of Scottsdale, Arizona. I've been primarily working with SharePoint for about 8 years, dabbling in SQL Server, keeping my expertise in that area, but primarily focusing on SharePoint. I've been a Microsoft certified trainer for 18 years, consulting with SharePoint and SQL Server. I'm the author of a couple of different books, as you can see towards the bottom here. I co-authored the 2010 Administrator's Companion book, and you then grab a different color here. And I co-authored the 2013 Administration Inside Out book. So I have a couple books that you can purchase from Amazon.com, depending on what flavor of SharePoint that you're running. I'm privileged to be a speaker or slash trainer, I should say. I'm a trainer at CBT Nuggets, based out of Eugene, Oregon. My email address, should you have any questions about anything that we talk about today throughout the session, or anything about SharePoint in general, is brian.alderman@cbtnuggets.com. I do also have a blog that's available. If you go to my company website, microtechpoint.com, that's where I was doing some consulting, but CBT Nuggets is keeping me pretty busy now, which is great. But if you go to microtechpoint.com, I have a blog out there that I don't update this quite as often as I should, but you can keep an eye on what's going on with me and what's going on with SharePoint on that blog. If you use Twitter at all, there's two options, I think, or handles that I think you should follow. One is CBT Nuggets, and the other is mine, at Brian Alderman, and this allows you to follow what's going on. And I don't tweet every time I'm going to have lunch or dinner, or what I'm having for lunch or dinner. It's more professional and speaking engagements and things that you can keep an eye on that are specific to SharePoint. My LinkedIn profile, if you want to get more information about me, is on LinkedIn, and it's Brian Alderman on LinkedIn. If you want to access that, you're welcome to do so. And again, I hope this will generate some questions in your mind, so I hear from you at brian.alderman@cbtnuggets.com. I love to travel. One of the things I get to do with the SharePoint community is speak at a lot of conferences. In fact, I'll speak at about 20 different conferences this year alone, not including that's probably going to total up to about 35 to 40 sessions. And that's what I'm here to talk to you about. What is available for you to attend for conferences or events? I love to play golf. I'm not good at golf, but I love to play golf, hence the reason I live in Scottsdale, Arizona. And this is one of the reasons right here. Look at the size of that cup on the green. You're able to chip in from pretty much anywhere. My game has improved by about 20 strokes just because of the fact that they have a little bit more giving cups here, forgiving cups here in Arizona. I love the fact the guy is squatting down to line up his putt. I'm not quite sure. I think you could pretty much do that blindfolded. But anyway, we're going to move on to talk about SharePoint. Specifically, I want to talk about the different tracks that are available, because there's really different levels of users. There are the IT pros and the administrators who actually install SharePoint, configure, and optimize SharePoint. So those are the ones that get SharePoint up and running. Then you have your developers. They use something like Visual Studio to customize the interface so it really looks and feels the way you want it to be, and it gives it that extra functionality. Then you have your end users, or your IWs, your information workers, and there's 3 tiers of those. There's the collaborators, who pretty much just work on content. Then you have site owners who can customize not only the content, but also the look and feel of your interface. And then you have the site collection administrators, which is able to perform tasks that affect all of the sites within that site collection. We also have a group of individuals called designers or branders. These are the ones that take content or the interface and give it that consistent look and feel. So no matter what page you're on, you know what you can expect to find at the top and on the side of a SharePoint page. And then we have our executives. Our executives need to know what's going on with SharePoint because it's very powerful. It's one of the most powerful tools Microsoft has ever released. I mean, if you think about it, they have operating systems, and then they have Windows. They have operating systems, and then they have the Windows, the Microsoft Office. Those two are probably the most popular applications that Microsoft releases. But then SharePoint's in third because of the power that it has and what it integrates with. SharePoint is a collaboration system, and it's one of the most popular collaboration systems. In fact, about 78% of Fortune 500 companies use SharePoint. Last count, and these numbers are about 3 years old, there was over 100 million SharePoint users in the world, and they were anticipating adding 10,000 a day. And again, this is a few years old, so you can imagine just how many people are out there. Why do people jump to SharePoint? The product integration, the ease of use. It integrates with Windows operating system features. So if you're an IT pro, it integrates with things like Exchange, your operating system, Active Directory, RIS, DNS. All of those are components that work with SharePoint. If you're familiar with more of a collaboration end user, Microsoft Office is available, and it integrates very nicely with SharePoint. If you're a project manager, Project Server integrates with SharePoint. For internal communications, you have Link that integrates with SharePoint. So it's a very powerful, I call it an SOS, system of systems, a very powerful SOS. And it can be used to provide a company centralized repository. I call it one-stop shopping. I'm able to go to one interface and from that one landing page, access content throughout the entire organization. I need to find HR content or finance content or what's going on in the news content. I can find that by landing on one page and then branching out according to the navigation that's been set up. So with its popularity, it's very important to have community support, and that's what this webinar is all about. What do we have available to us to get more knowledgeable on SharePoint? The first thing we have are several different conferences. This first screen that you see, I'll be speaking at all of these upcoming conferences. SP TechCon, I have a couple sessions out there. They have 2 of those events a year. These are kind of guidelines. This first one is going to be in Boston, Massachusetts in September. That's the one I'm speaking at. And then sometime in the spring, they also have one on the West Coast out in California. So SP TechCon is probably one of the most powerful or popular conferences. And again, I'll be speaking at that one next month, next month in September. SP Live is another one. This one's in Orlando, Florida in November. This is not just limited to SharePoint. Notice we also have SQL Server and we have Visual Studio as options, as well as some apps that they focus on. So that's another one I'll be presenting a couple sessions at in November. SharePoint-a-Lose-It. This one's pretty cool. We're going to talk about SharePoint Saturdays in a slide or two. But this one's unique. This is the first year that they've done this as a SharePoint-a-Lose-It. It's a 2-day event, a Friday and a Saturday, and I'm going to be presenting on that one as well. And that's in Branson, Missouri. That's also next month, September, out in Branson, Missouri. And that's one that is kind of a more of an entertaining. They actually bring in bands, a few different bands that play in the evenings, Thursday night, Friday, and Saturday night. So it's very much engaging during the day with speakers from around the world, as all these conferences. All these conferences have MVPs, MCMs, Microsoft Certified Masters. So there's lots of information and knowledge that are shared throughout these conferences. Some cost a little bit more than others, and that's one of the things you have to research is where do you want to put your, invest your money in for these conferences. The good news is you have several to choose from. It's just which one fits right, is right for you. Dev Intersections is coming up soon. This one's going to be in November. I'll also be presenting on that one. They do also a cross-platform of SharePoint, SQL Server, Visual Studio, Office 365, and Azure. So if you're someone who's got multi-talents and you're not just on SharePoint, you also need some SQL Server expertise. Maybe you're a developer, you want some Visual Studio exposure. Maybe you work all online where you're Office 365 or Azure. Items or conferences like Dev Intersections is one of the conferences that you'll want to attend to gain that knowledge. Now that's just slide 1. Let's go to slide 2. There are also 4 conferences throughout the country and these are called SharePoint Fest conferences. They are held in New York City, Denver, Chicago, and DC. I'll be presenting at the Denver conference next month. I have 4 conferences in 2 weeks next month. So one of them will be in Denver. Again, New York City, Denver, Chicago, and DC. And then you'll also see that there's a SharePoint Tech Fest. It took me a while to get used to these. But there's also a Tech Fest. I've already spoken at the one that was held here in Phoenix just a couple months back. And that's another one that you have available to based on your location and the type of content. The SharePoint Fest is a couple of days. The SharePoint Tech Fest is usually a single day. Notice I've applied or I've supplied the links for all of these because you may want to dig into these a little bit deeper and find out which one's most appropriate for you. The IT Dev Connections is coming up in September, and that's going to be in Las Vegas. And that one is another cross-platform SharePoint SQL Server Exchange is available in this one as well. Some Windows and some Dev is available in that. So there's about 7 or 8 major conferences that are held that are specific to SharePoint or provide you a cross-platform of SharePoint, SQL, Exchange, Windows, and it hits the tracks. Every one of these hits the dev track, the information worker / end user track, the IT pro track, and you normally have one for your executives as well as designers and those that provide the branding, giving you that consistent look and feel throughout your site. Now, there's a site called Top SharePoint Conferences that's available to you. It doesn't contain all of these conferences that I'm talking about or referring to here, but if you hit this link, it's a way to keep an eye on what conferences are coming up, and it's kind of like one-stop shopping. Again, it doesn't really contain all of these conferences, but it's one I thought I'd throw out there in case you want to bookmark that as a place to look to see what's happening with conferences in your area. The cool thing again about these is they're spread around the country, like the SharePoint Fest. You'll see that you have New York City, Denver, Chicago, and DC. The SharePoint Tech Fest, more of a Midwest to, I should say, Southwest to Western conference as far as its location. But then you have the SP TechCon, which has an East Coast and a West Coast version. Some other events that you should become familiar with, and probably the most popular one, is this one here called the SharePoint Saturday. And the SharePoint Saturday these are everywhere. And this link is one I strongly suggest that you bookmark because this has a list of all of the SharePoint Saturdays that have taken place. These are international SharePoint Saturdays. So you'll find events. There's one coming up in Jersey. There's in Jersey over in the New England area. I'm sorry, in England, because there's also one coming up in New Jersey in the New England area that I'm speaking at. But these are free, that's the key word, free SharePoint Saturday events. And what these do is they bring in, again, talented speakers from all over the country, all over the world, and they provide you a 1 day of content. And they have all of the tracks that we talked about that you can attend. Most of them have a giveaway at the end. I've seen people get Xboxes. I've seen them get Surface tablets. And they just all of the vendors or sponsors that come in supply giveaways. So at the end of every one, there's also a giveaway. And then they normally bring in a very decent lunch for you to have, so you don't have to worry about once you get there at 8:30 on Saturday, because we realize that you're taking a day out of away from your family, and we want to make sure that you get as much of that time or knowledge from as much of that time that you're there. So we come in and we make sure that we give you good sessions. There's giveaways, there's lunch, and again, these don't cost anything. You can sign up for those. Check out spsevents.org to access where those are being held. Now, something that's new starting next year is the Microsoft Unified Technology Conference. That's the name today. I don't know if that's what's going to stay. What we used to have a SharePoint conference. I just spoke at a SharePoint conference in Vegas back in March. I had over 700 people in one of my sessions. Exchange had one of their conferences. They had their own conference. Link had their own conference. Project had their own conference. Tech Ed North America was yet another conference. Office 365, there was dabblings of those conferences. Those are all coming together in this Unified Technology Conference. And again, that's the name today. I'm not sure if it's going to retain that name, but you're going to want to keep an eye on that. And this link will bring you to the the announcement of this conference. This is announced that's going to be May 4th, 2015 in Chicago. So you may want to get that on your calendars because that will be the event that's going to be replacing the SharePoint Exchange, Link Project, TechEd, O365 individual conferences that we're used to having in the past. Those will be going away, and it will be one unified conference that's going to be held next year at least in Chicago. So you may want to jot that down and start keeping an eye on that for what's going to be happening available for bringing all these technologies together. We also have what are called user groups. These are also free. These are international. You can find these all over the world as well. These are normally a Wednesday or Thursday night for a couple of hours. Every month you'll meet, the user group will meet. The difference between this and a SharePoint Saturday is a user group will probably have one individual come in and speak about one topic. Where in a SharePoint Saturday you have individuals that are talking about IT pro topics, that are talking about dev topics, information worker topics. So you have different topics that are available on a SharePoint Saturday with several sessions to choose from, where a user group is going to be more specific to a topic, and you normally can attend that or find what that topic is before you attend the user group meeting. But I strongly suggest you take a peek at those. And those are, the association with the user group is with the local SharePoint Saturday, or the SPS. So you can look for SPS. Like I speak at SPS NYC for New York City, SPS DC for the DC portion. SPX PHX is coming up for Phoenix. So user groups are generally more specific to a smaller group of people and are generally one topic of conversation for that presentation. The beauty of all these is all of the free knowledge, but one thing that takes it up even to the next level is what's called SharePoint. Every SharePoint conference or event, even I believe most user groups, that's the only one that may not do this, have a SharePoint during that conference. A SharePoint is when we step outside of the four walls of the venue where we're hosting the event, and we go to a local tavern of some sort. And usually there's a sponsor that will pick up, a round of bevies, maybe some appetizers, and then they really get to network people. All the speakers go, all the attendees go that choose to go, the organizers go. It's a good way just to have a one-on-one conversation with those speakers to get more information, maybe even to answer some questions specific to your environment that would be beneficial for you to take home and work with. So SharePoint is just another reason for you to attend on top of all the free knowledge or all the knowledge you're obtaining, because it gives you a little bit more of a outside the four walls and more of a fun atmosphere for working with SharePoint. Now you may want to just be sitting at home and looking at gathering content. There were so many blog sites, I really didn't even know which ones to choose here. Some of the URLs are very lengthy, but I want to make sure you're able to access them. SharePoint Community is one I strongly suggest because that one gives you a plethora across the board of blog articles or posts that you can monitor and keep an eye on what's going on with the SharePoint community. Bill Baer is one of the top-notch executives, gurus at Microsoft. He blogs some of the more in-depth IT pro information. Spence Harbar, he's based over out of the UK. He is also one of the top, I would say, IT pro designer area. Jeremy Thake, Veronique. Jeremy is more of, I would say, he's more a dev. Veronique is more end user. And we have the Microsoft Office blog. I suggest you look at that one. Chris O'Brien is definitely more into the dev. He goes to the nuts and bolts, as it says there. And then Christian Buckley. These are just the top 7 or 8 that I grabbed. There's tons more out there. But these are some that I suggest that you follow because they're constantly posting content about SharePoint and what's new and what's going on with SharePoint. Now, I don't know how many of you have Twitter or handles, but you can also use Twitter to retrieve content. And then these Twitter handles like SP TechCon, this one is for the SP TechCon, specifically for the SP TechCon conference, SharePoint Technical Conference. So I listed all of these, and I suggest that you follow any of these that you're interested in, and for getting information about what's going on with SP Live in Orlando, what's going on with the Intersection conference that's going on in Vegas, the 3 or 4 Tech Fest and SharePoint Fest options. You know, what options, what dates are going to be released? Because those dates I gave you for the conference are good for this year, but next year the venues may change, the location may change, the dates may change. So if you use a Twitter handle and have a Twitter account, I suggest that you follow these. Now, up here is the coolest word that I've learned probably this year, maybe the end of last year. It's an octothorpe. An octothorpe is one of those, it's this guy right here. The octothorpe is this guy right here. But it's a lot cooler word. Often you hear the pound sign or the hashtag. I like the octothorpe. What I want to do is I want to call into my bank, and when it says, press 2 to go to sales, I want to hear, and then press the octothorpe button. A lot of people wouldn't even know what it is, but I like that word. It's one of my favorite words that I use whenever I present, and I had to get it into this presentation somehow. So if you want to win a little bet, you can now just say, hey, instead of using the hashtag or the pound sign, we're going to now call this baby an octothorpe, and we're going to use that in our general conversation just to see how many curious looks when you say, yeah, so you just press 2 in the octothorpe. People are going to look at you a little weird, but it's okay. I get that all the time. So take a look and take advantage of these options here that are available for following, so you get up to the minute information about these. The SharePoint Saturdays, the full SharePoint Saturday is SPS_events. But again, if you want to follow SPS New York City, it's SPS NYC. Baltimore is SPS Bmore. If you got Phoenix, SPS PHX. So you can specifically follow one in your location instead of following all of them if you should choose to do so. Same with the users group, only they start with location. So they might be PHX, SPUG for the local user group that's available to us. And again, the user groups are international. The UK has their own flavor of that. If you go to that site that I've listed out for the link, you're going to see, I think, 6 different options just to get into the category, the country that you even want to work in. SP Help is one. So if someone comes up to me and says, what's the cheapest, fastest way to get help on SharePoint? This is it right here. If you have a question about SharePoint, go into Twitter and use SP Help, and there's lots and lots of gurus, SharePoint gurus that follow that. Post that question on Twitter using this hash mark or octothorpe SP Help, and you'll get some information back on how you can resolve your problem that you posted. So this Twitter environment is very powerful for you, and I want to make sure you take advantage of that. So if you look at the different options that we have conferences. Some cost a little bit more than others. I would say starting with SP TechCon, SP Live. Those are probably up there in the price a little bit more in comparison to SharePoint Palooza, which is $139 I think to sign up for that. SharePoint Saturday, those are free. User groups, those are free. Blog sites, those are free. Using Twitter handles, those are free. And then, of course, you can also get more information about SharePoint, more in-depth knowledge from attending our on-demand training videos. And if you're interested in hearing me speak or getting information on SharePoint in my blog, go to www.microtechpoint.com, and on there you'll have Brian's blog that you can access, and also you'll have my speaking schedule. I still have 10 events coming up this year with about 18 to 20 sessions. And there's a couple that I haven't posted on my site yet that I know I'm speaking at. They just haven't been officially announced so I haven't been able to post them. But I know there's at least 2 more events that I'll be speaking at. If you check out www.microtechpoint.com, check out Brian's blog for information on SharePoint. Check out my speaking schedule to find out when I will be in your area, because I'd love to have you join me. Well, that's all we have for information, but I'd love to see if there's any questions that may have come in with the chats throughout the presentation. Heidi, do you have any questions for us?
I don't have any questions yet. Actually, no, I do have a few. So looks like the first question that just came in is, what is the least expensive event to attend?
Well, I would say the least expensive is a couple that you can do. My first one would be the Pound SP Help, and then your SharePoint Saturdays, and then your blogs. Those 3 are free, and you can do those pretty much from your office except for the SharePoint Saturday. And that's just, like I said, 6-7 hours on a Saturday. If it's raining, you probably wouldn't want to be outside anyway. So my order would be SP Help using the Twitter, then SharePoint Saturdays, your user groups, And then if you start into really setting up, putting out any cash, SharePoint Illusion is probably going to be your least costly of the conferences that we talked about.
Okay, it looks like we do have another question that is asking if this presentation will be available. And we will be sending this out to everyone that is on the call. And again, it's also available on our blog at blog.cbtnuggets.com. The next question I see is, are there any discounts available for any of the conferences?
Yeah, the good thing about SP TechCon, even SP Live, which are both coming up soon, I believe it's even until Friday, one of them is ending, they have an early bird discount. So if you hit those websites by Friday, and again, I can't recall, one's ending this week and one I think is ending next week, there's usually an early bird where they knock off $400 or $500 for doing that. So if you want to check those sites out, go ahead and check those sites out and check to see what their early bird registration discount is.
Perfect. Another question from someone is, how do I sign up to speak at one of these events?
Oh, great question. That was one of the things. It took me a while to penetrate and get into the speaking opportunities. And the best thing I would suggest is, if you wanted to speak, is start with a user group, because again, it's just you, it's one topic, and then try to branch out into some of the SharePoint Saturdays. And what some of the organizers look for is how often you've spoken and what the topics are. If I come up with a just plain old boring topic, they're going to be like, yeah, everyone knows how to use that. You probably have less, but you try to focus on something that's unique. I do one of my most popular ones that I had 700 people in Vegas was how to optimize SQL Server for SharePoint. How do I get SharePoint to be more efficient using SQL Server? That's by far one of the most popular topics I use. So focus on the topic. Try to find something that's unique, but not too unique where only 3 people show up, but that's powerful enough to get enough attendees, because they do look at attendees whether or not they're going to use that topic again in the future. And then try to get some experience speaking. Some of the bigger conferences want to see that you've spoken at conferences before. So I would say get some good topics and then try to get some speaking history, starting with maybe like user groups and SharePoint Saturday. Great question.
And it looks like our last question is, do you know if there are any international conferences, and if so, any in Nigeria?
There are international conferences. I would go to that top SharePoint Conferences site for my first start. Last year, I know I spoke in Italy last year. I spoke in Madrid, Spain last year, and I spoke in London last year. And I know there's going to be what's called an Evolutions Conference in the UK, in London, next April. That is probably one of the most popular. In fact, I'm going to go with it is the most popular conference that's held in the UK. Nigeria specifically, I don't know, unfortunately, but I would start with, like I said, the top SharePoint conferences. So you can get some links off that site that might send you in the right direction.
Thank you, Brian. All right. Well, I want to thank you very much, Brian, for facilitating this great call. Participants, I want to thank you for taking the time out of your week to take this call and for asking some great questions. Again, if you have further questions, feel free to send Brian a tweet at Brian Alderman. He's on Twitter at Brian Alderman. Again, the recording is going to be on our blog. It's blog.cbtnuggets.com. We will also be sending out copies of the slides to all the participants on the call. And that's all we've got. So again, thank you very much and have a great day.